Welcome to this fascinating journey into the world of animal diversity. Today, we are going to explore a mind-bending concept called polymorphism in Cnidarians. Imagine a city where every citizen is physically transformed to perfectly match their specific job. Bakers with ovens for hands, or soldiers with natural armor. In the ocean, animals like jellyfish and corals actually live this way. We will discover how they do it, why it makes them incredibly successful, and even look at the mathematics behind their survival. Let us dive in. Now that we have our city analogy in mind, let us define what this means biologically. Polymorphism is the occurrence of two or more structurally and functionally different types of individuals within the exact same species or colony. In the phylum Cnidaria, these individual members are called zooids. Even though these zooids share the exact same DNA and are genetically identical, they look completely different from one another. This happens because their bodies are physically shaped by the specific jobs they need to perform for the colony. It is a brilliant evolutionary strategy that turns a group of individuals into one unified superorganism. Building on the idea of zooids, let us look at the two basic blueprints that Cnidarians use. The first fundamental form is the polyp. A polyp is typically a tubular, stationary form, meaning it stays attached to a surface. It has a mouth facing upwards and is primarily dedicated to feeding the colony and defending it from threats. The second form is the medusa. Unlike the stationary polyp, the medusa is an umbrella-shaped, free-swimming form with its mouth facing downwards. The medusa's main job is sexual reproduction and swimming away to disperse the species to new locations. Knowing the two basic forms, we can now see how evolution takes this a step further. Through evolutionary modifications, these basic polyps and medusae become highly specialized for single tasks. We get gastrozoids, which are feeding polyps, equipped to capture and digest prey. Then we have dactylozoids, which are defensive polyps, loaded with stinging cells to protect the colony. Finally, we have gonozoids, the reproductive zoids responsible for creating new life. Because each zoid is so specialized, it cannot survive on its own. The gastrozoid cannot reproduce, and the gonozoid cannot feed itself. They absolutely rely on each other. So why does this extreme specialization matter so much in the natural world? The primary advantage is the strict division of labor. Think of a modern factory assembly line, where each machine does one specific task perfectly. If every single zooid had to hunt, defend, and reproduce all at once, they would waste massive amounts of energy and be mediocre at all three. By dividing these tasks, polymorphic colonies operate with maximum efficiency. This allows creatures like the Portuguese man-o'-war to dominate their marine environments and capture prey far larger than any single zooid could handle alone. Understanding this biological efficiency leads us to an important question. How does the colony balance its energy? We can deeply understand the evolutionary advantage of a colony using a mathematical resource allocation model. Think of the colony as a business that must balance its income against its expenses. The formula on screen represents the net energy of the colony. The variable e-Net is the total energy available. Ng is the number of feeding gastrozoids, and Eg is the energy each one gains. Nd and Cd represent the number and cost of defensive dactylozoids. Finally, Nr and Cr represent the number and cost of reproductive gonozoids. If feeding increases, net energy goes up. If there are too many defenders, energy drops. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. We have a small colony with 10 gastrozoids generating 15 units of energy each. It also has 5 dactylozoids costing 4 units each, and 2 gonozoids costing 10 units each. We need to calculate the net energy. We chose our resource allocation formula because it perfectly models this biological budget. First, we substitute our given values into the equation. We multiply 10 by 15 to get 150 units of income. Then we calculate the costs, 20 units for defense and 20 units for reproduction. Subtracting the 40 units of cost from the 150 units of income leaves us with 110. This positive surplus means the colony is highly successful and thriving. Now that we have seen a thriving colony, let us look at what happens during environmental stress. A colony is floating in a nutrient-poor ocean. It has 50 gastrozoids, but they only generate 2 units of energy each due to lack of prey. It has 30 dactylozoids, costing 3 units each, and 10 gonozoids, costing 5 units each. We need to find the current net energy. We plug these stressed values into our formula. The income is now only 50 times 2, which is 100 units. The defense cost is 90, and reproduction is 50. Subtracting these costs from the 100 units of income gives us negative 40. This negative value physically means the colony is starving and burning more energy than it consumes. It must adapt immediately. This negative energy result leads us to an important derivation. How does the colony save itself? To find the break-even point, where the colony stops starving, we must set the net energy to exactly 0. 0 represents the absolute minimum survival threshold. We keep the energy gained at 100 and the reproduction cost at 50, assuming these cannot be changed quickly. However, we leave the number of defensive zooids as an unknown variable, which we will call ND new. By setting up the equation this way, we are mathematically asking, what is the maximum number of defenders this poor food supply can actually support? Continuing our derivation, we now solve for the new number of defensive zooids. We rearrange the equation to isolate our unknown variable. By moving the defensive cost term to the left side, it becomes positive. We then subtract the reproduction cost of 50 from the total energy gained of 100, leaving us with 50 on the right side. Dividing 50 by 3 gives us approximately 16.67. Because a colony cannot have a fraction of a living zooid, it must round down. The colony can only support a maximum of 16 dactylozoids. To survive, it must shed or reabsorb 14 of its original 30 defenders. This proves how polymorphic colonies dynamically balance their members to survive. Now that we have proven how the colony balances its energy, let us visually examine the structure of these specialized zooids. On screen is a schematic of a polymorphic Cnidarian colony. Notice the shared base, called the stolon, which connects everyone together and allows energy to flow between them. On the left, you see the gastrozoid, with its long tentacles reaching out to capture prey. In the middle is the dactylozoid, packed tightly with stinging cells for defense. And on the right, the gonozoid is shown containing small circular structures, which are the medusa buds preparing for reproduction. This diagram perfectly illustrates the physical division of labor we just calculated. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, Polymorphism is a brilliant evolutionary strategy where a single species develops multiple physically distinct forms called zooids. Second, by specializing into feeding gastrozooids, defensive dactylozooids, and reproductive gonozooids, the colony achieves a strict division of labor. Finally, this division of labor ensures that energy is utilized perfectly, allowing the colony to adapt to environmental stress and dominate marine environments as a highly efficient superorganism. You now understand both the biology and the mathematics behind Cnidarian polymorphism.